Number 10. This is something that happened to me when I was around 4 or 5 years old, but I still remember it to this day. We used to live in this apartment complex called Northwood Village. I remember it as being fairly decent and quiet, like nothing bad really happened there. Needless to say, I wasn't really expecting what happened. The halls in my building were usually empty, so I would often be alone, walking, running, playing ding dong ditch, just the usual things that little kids do when they're bored. One day, I was walking in the halls and I see this guy. I still remember what he looked like. He was white with messy hair, wearing a denim jacket with no shirt and a pair of jeans. And he was also barefoot. As I walked closer, I saw that his fly was open, exposing his bare erect penis. We didn't exchange words, didn't even look at each other. He just breezed right on by me, staring straight ahead. For whatever reason, I didn't find this little encounter creepy until I told my sister about it. She then went on to tell me that she'd also come across this guy, sitting on a flight of stairs in a different building. Same clothes, same situation, but this time, he was pouring water on his penis while telling my sister, "It tastes like candy." Thank God nothing happened to my sister that day, but I'm beginning to get anxious at the thought of what could have happened. I have no idea what happened to that guy, as I never saw him again after my encounter, but I will never forget him. So, creepy guy in the hall, if you're still out there somewhere, let's not meet ever again. Number 9. This is my first time posting on Reddit. I've been content, just lurking for quite some time, but I found this thread and figured it would be the right place to share this story. It's bothered me for a long time, and maybe it'll help write it out. When I was 6, I went to a week-long family reunion at a lodge somewhere. I only have a few vague memories of this, mostly involving candy, like many of my earliest memories. Years later, I had a couple vivid nightmares about this lodge, and about a man, 60-ish, overweight, with bright blue eyes, and white hair that had vacated to the top of his head. The more disturbing details of these nightmares are not important. Dreams are very unreliable sources. But I do have one real memory of this vacation that is very clear. I was lying in bed one night, long after my siblings had gone to sleep. I never had trouble sleeping as a child, but this night I was wide awake when I heard something at my window that made me jump out of my skin. I ran to my parents' room, crying hysterically, and pounded on the door so hard that my fists hurt. The memory ends there, but years later, when I started having the nightmares, I asked my parents about it. That was when I found out that when they'd gone to my room that night, they found the screen cut open from the outside, and a small ladder leaning against the window. My parents had us sleep in their room, and we left early the next day. What would have happened if I'd been able to sleep that night? I think I'd rather not know. Number 8. Ever since I was a child, I've had a terrifying fear of green trucks. They always sparked my anxiety, I'm 15 now, but about 8 years ago, my grandma had met a new man. For the sake of privacy, we'll call him Charlie. Charlie was never right in the head, but 5-year-old me never caught this until much later. I spent every weekend alone at my grandma's house. I thought he was great. He would always spend time with me, and he would cuddle me all the time. By the time I was 8, he walked in on me changing. He walked back out quickly. Soon after, my grandma ran in and locked the door. I was really confused. She screamed at me to always lock the door. She told me a story that terrified me. When my grandpa was about 45, he had gotten drunk and snuck into a married couple's house, molesting their 10-year-old girl. He was arrested after that and put on parole for 15 years. At this time, red flags were going insane around my head. I got dressed and called my mum to come get me. Later that month, my grandpa was let off parole. I was terrified. He started drinking again and doing drugs. He then started to get terrifying. Every time I went over to my grandmother's house, he would always stare at me with a lust in his eyes that terrified me. One day, while at school, I walked out and saw this green truck parked in the lot across from the playground. I was terrified, but I stupidly never told anyone about it. I'd sat by the teacher the whole time at recess. When I got home, I told my mum how I didn't feel safe around him. She had told me that I didn't have to go back, and I was under constant watch by my mother and father, watching for any sign of him. I always saw the green truck roll by at any time of the day. I never left the house without pepper spray or my mother. By the time I was 11, my grandmother had dumped his sorry ass, and he left. For good? No. Charlie came back leaving marks on the windows and tried breaking into the house. My grandma has cameras. The camera on the east side of the house caught someone hiding in the dumpster. Soon, we called the police and they arrested Charlie. I haven't seen him since, but every time I see a green truck, I have a panic attack. So Charlie, let's not ever meet again. Number 7. This happened when I was 13 years old. As a background, I was a young female, and the town I live in doesn't have much there. The area of the town I live in has practically nothing. Just a Walmart, some thrift stores, chain restaurants, and a Target. One day, I had gone to Target with my grandmother. We'd split up as usual. She was heading towards the groceries, and I was in the clothing/jewellery aisles. Typical female things. While I was searching through the clothes, I noticed an old man staring at me. Mind you, I was a fairly attractive young female, a bit more than average, and I thought nothing of it. Just a creepy old guy. Living in the deep south, we got a lot of weirdos over here. After about 10 minutes or so, I moved on, looking through the store. Nothing too special, just browsing until my grandmother was going to find me when she finished. Not long after, I noticed the old guy from earlier was following me. And I'm not talking, maybe he's just here by coincidence. I'm talking, this dude was very clearly following me. Thinking back on things I'd heard about being in such situations, I picked a certain place in the store, then promptly walked around the entire store, making sure it wasn't just a coincidence. Sure enough, same guy followed me everywhere. I was fucking creeped out by this point, so I went into jewellery. Being that it's in the front of the store, and very close to many people in the checkout lanes. This guy was moving in at this point, literally cornering me against two walls. He muttered a small, "Hey!" and I felt him try to grip my arm. Suddenly, a gift from God himself somehow. My grandmother came wheeling around the corner, asking if I was ready. In the loudest, yet steady voice I could muster, I loudly proclaimed, "Grandma!" and noped the fuck out of there. Looking back on it, I was really lucky. I can't help but wonder what could have happened had my grandma taken any more time in that damn store. I'm still living in the same place, but I thank God every day that I've never seen him again. Number 6. I want to start off by saying that I'm not the world's greatest writer, so I apologise in advance if my writing's not up to par with the other stories on this sub. Anyways, enjoy. My grandmother used to work as a nurse in my hometown. She enjoyed the job and got along pretty well with her co-workers. Almost every morning, she would get herself some fresh coffee from the break room, since there was a man there who always ended up making it for everyone. One day, she was getting herself some coffee as usual. Upon taking a sip of the beverage, she immediately spat it out and dumped it in the sink. When telling the story, she had told me that it tasted like there was sugar in it, and she absolutely hates coffee with sugar in it. A while later, an arrest was made on a man named Michael Swanger, the guy preparing the coffee in the break room. He was convicted of aggravated battery for poisoning co-workers and patients with arsenic and other poisons. So it turns out, there was never any sugar in it. Instead, there was poison. Ever since then, she had brought her own coffee instead. So thanks to my grandma's disliking for sugary coffee, she's still alive to this day. Number 5. So, yeah, this is my second story here. I am currently 14 years old, and this happened about 2 years ago. A little bit of backstory. My dad and I go to this restaurant about 15 minutes away from where I live. You had to go and arrive by about 8 AM, or you will have a hard time finding a seat. It's a small place. Me and my dad were driving back to our house, where we found this white SUV, a Toyota I think, just parked in our driveway. He saw us turning in and tried to make it look like he was doing a U-turn. He pulled out of the driveway and gave me and my dad a dirty look. I was about to flip him off, but my gut told me better. My dad and I went through the front door. We did not want to risk him coming through the garage. We got inside, and the mother fricker was parked in one of our neighbours' driveways. I saw something in his hand, and then my dad called the sheriff's department. He then saw us again, and drove to our corner and looked at another house. My dad then got his camera, but he couldn't get a good shot of the license plate. He got questioned this time by my neighbour, but he still went down the road. About a week later, there was an attempted break-in on the news, and the car driven was a white SUV. I didn't tell the news or the cops, as my little boy mode was like, he will target me down. I regret not calling the police, and he was not caught. But, random breaking guy? Let's not meet again. Number 4. This happened years ago, probably around 1999 or so, when I was about 17. My parents' house has a front door with a living room immediately to the right, with a large window that looks right into the kitchen, straight ahead of where you enter the front door. We used to leave the shutters open for that living room window, and you'd be able to see in or out. One night, around 11:30 PM or so, I was in the fully lit kitchen with a towel wrapped around my head. That's completely irrelevant, but for some reason I'll never forget it. While drinking a juice box, I started wandering around aimlessly and entered the living room. I stood there for a bit, kind of staring into space, when I realised that there was a man standing on my front lawn, looking back at me. I have no idea how long he was there, but the first thing that entered my mind was, wow, this is so embarrassing. I'm wearing a towel on my head and drinking a juice box. Generally, if you're in your home and a dude is on your lawn staring at you, you should be more concerned about other things, i.e. your safety. Anyway, I awkwardly walked back into the kitchen, not knowing what to do, when I heard the softest knocks on my front door. At that point, I freaked out, which should have been my initial reaction, and went to my parents' room to wake up my dad. I eventually got him up, after hearing another set of soft, quiet knocks, and while he was getting his bearings straight, I crept back into the living room and kneeled on the floor to peek out of the window and see if the guy was still there. What I actually saw was him across the street and down a bit, getting tackled by a few cops, one of whom had a gun out. I don't know what the guy wanted, other than A, a hiding spot, B, to do something horrible to me. But the thing that weirded me out the most is that if he was seemingly being chased by cops, why was he just standing on the lawn staring at me instead of continuing to run? Number 3. This happened to me just a couple of months ago, the second weekend of November. I am a small girl, around 5'3" and 100 pounds. At the time of this story, I was having weight problems, so I was extremely skinny, which makes it all the more amazing that I survived this encounter unscathed. For the most part, I have mild PTSD. Anyway, I was house sitting for some friends in a sketchy part of Sacramento. I told my boyfriend at the time to stay with me all night, since they've already had a couple break-ins. We'll call him Jack. Jack and I were watching movies and having a good time when I fell asleep on the couch. I woke up a couple hours later to the door slamming and the sound of a car pulling away quickly. I was pissed. Jack was supposed to stay with me all night. I went to the front door, locked it, and went to look for the dogs, who were being mysteriously quiet. I found all 4 of them locked in the back room, scared as shit. So then I called Jack and asked him why he left in such a hurry, and when he'd be back, and why he locked the dogs in the room. He told me he'd been gone for 2 hours, and he hadn't put the dogs away. Cue the panic. Someone had come into the house while I was sleeping put the dogs in the room, and then watched me sleep. There was nothing missing from me or the house, except my hairbrush, which was sitting on the coffee table next to the couch where I was sleeping. Creepy intruder, let's never meet again. Number 2. It all started one day when I awoke from a deep sleep by a loud bang, which sounded like the door slamming. I immediately went to check out the noise, and no one was there. I looked down at my coffee table to see a note that had been left and signed by our landlord. I don't remember what it said, but I remember being creeped out by him letting himself in whilst I was asleep in my nightdress. During the course of the year, things started going missing. First a silver bracelet, a gold watch, an antique silver match holder. The strange thing is that there was never any sign of forced entry, and these items were never seen again. Fast forward some months, and stranger things started to happen. Underwear got removed from the drawer, it reappears stuffed through our letterbox days later. Keys go missing, which happens, and we thought nothing of it until yesterday, when the keys reappeared on the front porch, which sent chills down my spine, because there's no logical reason for them to go missing for a period of 3 months and then reappear on the porch. Just weeks before the keys reappeared, I took it upon myself to change the locks, install a camera. After reviewing the footage, we see the landlord desperately trying to gain access. When he can, he starts kicking and thumping on the doors and windows, and this goes on for over 30 minutes. The landlord had no reason to be here, and had not requested an inspection of the place. He was the only one with the key still to the gates, which provided access to the front porch. The police were informed, but claim it's a civil matter. Things stopped going missing or being moved when the landlord lost entry to our home. He now has started to harass us, and we now believe his behaviour is similar to that of a stalker or a sex pest. It leaves me asking, what will happen next? And I no longer feel safe in my own home. I ask myself, what should I do about this? Creepy landlord, let's not meet again. Number 1. When I was about 6 or 7, I used to take swimming lessons in a local pool after finishing school, twice a week on Wednesday and Fridays. On Fridays, Mum would take me into McDonald's to get a milkshake as a treat afterwards. I'd sit and drink my shake, then we'd head home, no problems. This day was different. I'd finished my shake and wanted the toilet before we left. So in I went, into the ladies on my own as I usually did. I noticed one cubicle was locked and thought nothing of it. Went in the second, did my thing, flushed, and noticed that the person in the other cubicle was unlocking the door too, even though I hadn't heard them flush. I turned around and it was a man. Old, disgusting and tall. Why was he there? I innocently said, "This is for ladies only, mister." And he said, "Why do you think I'm here, little girl? It's music to my ears. Where is your mummy?" He took a few strands of my hair and twirled them between his green fingers and reached a hand to grab me by the shoulder. I shook out of his grip and ran as fast as I could to my mum, crying. I told her what happened. She told an attendant, but by the time they checked, he'd managed to slip out unnoticed and into the busy street. I hope he never managed to get his hands on any little girls. Creepy toilet guy? Let's not meet. Well, anyway guys, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed, then please leave a like, share and subscribe if you haven't already. I'm sorry that these videos weren't as long as normal, but next time I'll make sure they're a little bit longer. If you have any stories of your own which you would like to have shared, then please make sure to contact me, and you may be featured in a future video. Well, anyway, I hope to see you soon, and I will speak to you later.